Sister Hu, Chang Shaoxi, a native of Sichuan, is a clever young man who can write articles. His parents died early, and his family was so poor and dull that he begged Mr. Hu to hire him for paperwork. Hu Yintai tried to get Cheng to write an article and was very happy after reading it, saying, "This person will not be poor for long, and he can give his daughter to him." Hu Yintai has 3 sons and 4 daughters, all of whom have booked relationships with big families since they were still in their arms. Only the youngest daughter, 16, was born of concubine. Her mother was already dead. She was 15 years old and not yet engaged. Mr. Hu promised the 4 to Mr. Cheng and recruited him as his son-in-law. Mr. Hu was sneered at for being confused and unrelated. Hu Yintai ignored them, cleaned the house, and let Cheng live in a house where meals and clothes were meticulously supplied. The princes despised Cheng Sheng and refused to eat with him. Even the servants and the slaves often sneer at him. Mr. Cheng quietly endured, "Never mind. Just studying hard." Cheng read the books and kept reading. Those people banged the gong again and rattled back and forth, so Cheng picked up the books and went to the bedroom to read. At first, when the 4 of us weren't married, there was a witch who could see what a man's worth. The witches looked at Mr. Hu's children one by one, without fawning. Only after the 4 of them came, they said, "This is a real noble." When the 4 of them married Cheng, the sisters called her noble and laughed at her. But the 16 is a quiet woman who hears what others call her, like she doesn't. Little by little, even the girls and the women were screaming. One of the girls, Geyer, was very rude, saying, "How can I know that Lang Jun won't be a noble officer?" When second sister heard, she scoffed and said, "Cheng Langru has become a dignitary and dug my eyes out." At that point, "I'm afraid I won't be able to spare 2 eyes," Gui'er said angrily. "If my second sister reneges on her promise, I will use my eyes instead," said Cheng Xiang, the sister's daughter. Geyer was even angrier, slapping her clap and vowing, "Discipline you all blind." The second sister hated Geyer's verbal assault and gave her a few slaps by shaking her hand. When Mrs. Hu heard about the incident, she was not so sure, but gave a chilly smile. Geyer cried to her mother, who was spinning the thread. After listening to her, she was not angry or talking. She continued to weave. Just in time for Miss Hu's birthday, the son-in-law came, and the salute filled the room. "What kind of birthday gift is it?" The wife-in-law laughed at her mother-in-law. The second daughter-in-law said, "Open your mouth with your shoulders open." The face of the 4 sisters is unashamed. People are more bullying her when they see her like a fool. The only concubine Li, Hu Yintai, is the biological mother of the 3rd sister, always respected the 4 women, often caring for her. He often told the 3 women, "The 4 women are cute, smart and smart. Your siblings are in her pocket." I don't know yet. Besides, Cheng Lang studied all day and night. How could he stay under the people? Don't follow them. Be nice to the sisters and see her in the future. So every time the 3 of them come home, they always make love to the 4 of them. This year, Cheng got Shukai because of Hu's help. The next year, the master was on his way to a science test. Just as Mr. Hu had died, Cheng wears a horse and wears a filial piety, like a son. Because of this, Cheng couldn't make it to the exam. After the bereavement period, the 4 sisters gave Cheng Sheng silver and let him supplement the book of bereaved talent. "You lived here for so long in the past and were not expelled only because you had an old father. It's impossible now. If you can raise someone in the exam this time, you may have this home when you come back." Cheng Shenglin said goodbye to Li, and Saniang all gave him many gifts. Cheng entered the examination room, furious, and conceived carefully, in order to make sure that he would pass the examination. Soon after, I let him off the list, and he didn't even make it. Mr. Cheng failed to live up to his ambition, angered and ashamed to return home. Luckily, I still have more money, so I carried my luggage into Beijing. At that time, most of the Hu family members were officials in Beijing, and Cheng Sheng was afraid that they would laugh at themselves and change their names, make up their home addresses, and ask the officials for jobs. A doctor named Li, a native of Donghai province, received Cheng Sheng as a host. and donated a tribute student to Changshang to take the Shentian scientific examination. This time, Changshang was awarded the official position of Jinshi in a battle-winning streak. Changshang then told Li Gong the truth. On loan of 1,000 coins, Mr. Li sent a butler to Sichuan to buy a house for Changshang. When Mr. Hu's father died, the family lost money and the housekeeper bought a villa for sale. And then they sent the horses to pick up the Saimei. Mr. Hera, after Mr. Chang won the exam, a comeback came. The Hu family hated hearing this. I found out the name didn't match and kicked out the joker. Just in time for Saburo's wedding. His relatives and friends are here to give him a gift. The sister-in-law is here, but the only four of us didn't get invited by the sister-in-law. Suddenly, a man ran in and presented a letter to the fourth lady. The brothers looked at each other, their faces disfigured. It's the relatives at the banquet who invite the four ladies. The sisters are uneasy, and I'm afraid the four of them will not come. After a while, the four ladies came. The congratulations, the moves, the hubbub, the noise. The four women listened to in the ears, the four women looked in the eyes, and the four women spoke in the mouth. But the four sisters remain as dignified as ever. It's only a little bit calmer when you see her in the past. Soon after, Chunhyang ran in and was bleeding. When people ask, Chungxiang can't answer the question. When the second mother yelled at her, Chunhyang cried and said, Geyer was pushing me to get my eyes. If I hadn't broken off, the ice would have let her dig up. The two of them are so embarrassed, they sweat all over their faces and flush the powder down. The four sisters remained silent and indifferent. The audience was silent and then they gave up. The four women came out dressed, only to worship Mrs. Li and Sister San, then went out and got in the car and laughed. You know, Chengjia bought the villa. When she first came to the villa, she was short of daily necessities. Mrs. Hu and the boys sent the servants, the girl and the instruments, and the four girls refused, accepting only one testicle from Mrs. Li. Soon after staying, Cheng returned from vacation to visit his tomb, and his car was full of entourage. At his father-in-law's house, Mr. Hu's coffin was paid a ritual, and then Mrs. Li was paid a visit. By the time the Hu brothers got dressed and asked to see Chengshang had gone home from his car. After Mr. Hu's death, his sons fought over property day in and day out, leaving his coffin there to be ignored. After a few years, the coffin was rotten and gradually the house was taken as a grave. Cheng was very sad to meet him, and did not consult with the Hu brothers. He funded the funeral by himself and chose the date of burial. On the day of the funeral, the traffic continued, and the village people marveled. Chengshang has been an official for more than 10 years. He has two sleeves clear. When people die in the countryside, he does everything he can. Hu Erlang was implicated in the murder case and jailed. The officials who tried the case were the same as Chengshang, and the law enforcement was very strict. Hu Delengying asked his father-in-law to write a letter to the official, but he ignored it. Even more afraid, Hu Daling asked Mrs. Li to write a letter and took it with him when he tried to beg for the fourth mistress, and was too ashamed to see her. When he came to Beijing, Hu Daling did not dare rush into the house. After seeing Chengshang's ascent, he came to the door and asked for a meeting. I'm looking forward to seeing the four of you and forgetting the past. When the doorman called, an original mother came out and led him into the inner room, where he laid out the dishes in a meadow. After eating and drinking, the four women came out, their faces gentle, asking, Big brother is busy at home. How can we have time to come here thousands of miles? The groom fell to his knees, weeping and saying why. The fourth wife picked him up and laughed, saying, Brother is a good man. What's the big deal? Is it worth it? When do you see someone whining? After reading the letter from Mrs. Li, the groom said, Sister-in-law's family are all amazing people. If they ask for their father and brother, they will be finished. Why are you here? The groom was dumb, but begging. She changed her face and said, I thought you came all this way to see your sister. You came here with a big case for your honor. And I threw my sleeves and I went inside. The groom is as embarrassed as he is irritated, and he has to come out. When I got home, I told her that the family was all big and small, and Mrs. Lee thought she was too patient. A few days later, Hu Erlang was released home. The whole family was happy and laughed at the fact that the four sisters wouldn't help each other and were left to be resented. Later, someone reports, and the fourth mistress sends a servant to greet Mrs. Lee. Mrs. Lee called in the man who brought the silver and said, "My wife is busy sending people to take care of the case of her second uncle, but she didn't care to write back to you. Let me present this gift in lieu of a letter." It was only at this time that everyone knew that Jiro's return was the result of the efforts of Chang Sheng and the 16. As the family grew impoverished, Mr. Chang took care of her more carefully. Because Mrs. Lee had no son, Chang took her to her home and raised her like a mother.
Alright, this story has come to an end. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.